take a moment.
Hello. And hey, Shanda, sorry, I think your mic is muted.
Sorry about that. Woo! I was muted. Sorry about that, folks. So this is Travarsi. I have Trevor here with me, and he is going to do the honors of walking us through FM synthesis using the Digitone tonight. I hope everyone is doing well out there. And yeah, Trevor, you ready to get started?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to go full screen with you and hand it over.
Cool. Yeah, so I was just playing a patch a second ago that I made that's got a bunch of different FM sounds. We're going to go over, of course, FM gets super deep, so we're not going to go over the intricacies of all of it, but at least the basics of how it works and how to, at least if you have an interesting preset, to kind of like look at it and figure out how it works and figure out how you can use some of the things that it's doing in your own patches. And maybe when you're turning knobs on your FM synth, know why the sounds are changing the way they are instead of just randomly kind of turning knobs, which is fun too. But and so yeah, we're using the Digitone as our main synth, which is a 4-operator FM synth, which has a lot of other cool features besides just FM stuff, which we'll talk about a little bit later too. But all of the thing, or most of the things that we'll talk about, you could do with other 4 or 6 operator FM synths. And we'll talk about the difference between 4 and 6 operator synths too. So let me load the basic sound so that we can kind of talk about the basics of FM.
All right.
Sorry, this isn't the exciting part.
Mm-hmm. So basically, you're just going to start all the way from scratch, correct? Just so everyone kind of got it. Okay.
Cool. So yeah, what you're hearing there is just a sine wave. Oh, let me turn the chorus off so we're just hearing the straight sound of the sine wave. Okay, so FM often uses sine waves, but it doesn't always. But we're going to start out with sine waves just to kind of show what's going on. So that's our sound right now. It's really just a sine wave, no modulation at all. And we can introduce frequency modulation. Let me do one other setting change. So yeah. So what you're hearing as this bar fills up that's more frequency modulation and less frequency modulation. And so there's sorry, let me pull my notes back up.
No, for sure.
And so the other interesting thing besides just creating tones like that, of course, is modulating those tones. And so basically the sine wave has no harmonics, right? It's just a clean tone. And as we add the modulation from the second sine wave, you can hear that we're adding a lot of harmonics or higher frequency content into the sound. So that's the basics of frequency modulation. The second part of frequency modulation is that the oscillators are, the frequency of them is not in notes, but in ratios. So if you see these numbers here, those numbers are basically ratios, which is the base note multiplied by this number. So basically that means that they have to do with the harmonic series. And so if that's a whole number, so this C is the one that we're hearing, which we'll talk more later about oscillator or carriers and modulators and which thing you're actually hearing and which is being modulated. So this one that says C is the sine wave that we're hearing. The one that says A is the sine wave that's frequency modulating that sine wave. And let's turn the frequency modulation back up a little. Turn the sound down a little bit so it's not super loud and obnoxious. And we're going to change the ratio of the modulating oscillator. And as you can see, when that is like a whole number, like if it's 1.00 or 2.00, it's a more harmonic sound. And the higher the number goes, the more kind of metallic-y and abrasive it sounds. And when that number isn't a whole number, like if it's 3.5, that's 3.5 there. This is 3. It's going to sound more, less harmonic, so more inharmonic or dissonant, or however you want to say it.
Okay.
So here, I think it's a little easier to hear if it's modulated. So that's 3 to 1, which is a even number, and then we'll do 3.5 to 1. Cool. Is that making sense so far?
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Sorry, I lost my my mic thing. I muted myself while you were talking.
Cool. So the other thing is the level here is the index. So I'll turn this back again so that it's constantly modulating. So the index is how much it's being modulated. And we can either, manually change that with a knob, or, we can use like an envelope or an LFO to change that over time. automatically. Cool. So then often with FM synths, the oscillators aren't called oscillators, they're called operators. Don't let that be confusing. All it means is that the frequency is marked with a ratio, which is relative to the bass note that you're playing, and that it basically has a built-in envelope, which is what we're seeing here. So a regular oscillator, like on an analog synth, just makes noise all the time. But an operator in an FM synth has an envelope built in, which can control how much of it is going out to the rest of the synthesizer.
Okay.
And that's the only difference really between a regular oscillator and a operator.
There is a question in the chat, I'll put it up on the screen. Are all 4 operators being utilized, or is it just one operator modulating another operator?
For right now, I'm just doing one operator modulating one other operator, just to keep it simple. So it's just, 2 of the 4.
Got it.
And we're going to talk about that later, because with FM, you always see this here, which is the algorithm, which especially on like a 6 operator synth looks really overwhelming because there's so many operators connected in different ways. But it can be a little less complicated if you look at it a specific way or from a different angle. Okay, one other thing I want to go over before we talk about the algorithms is feedback in FM, which is, in some ways, it will just make the sound a little bit brighter. And if you turn it all the way up, you actually just get noise coming out of the operator that is feeding back into itself. Let me just make sure I have this set right. Okay, so right now we are only hearing one operator, which has a feedback loop, but its feedback is turned all the way down. And I'm turning its feedback up. I think. Okay. So as you can hear, like, here it's the sine wave, and we're getting more and more harmonics. And then here we're getting to the point where we're starting to hear white noise. And the higher the feedback goes, then it basically turns into mostly noise with just a little bit of the tone left. And pretty much every digital FM synth has that feedback option, which just gives you the option of getting harsher wave shapes and also getting a kind of pseudo noise generator, since most of them don't have normal white noise generators built in. Cool. So yeah, those are the basic things that are like kind of the building blocks of FM, and everything else is just using those fairly simple things. Hopefully they seemed simple and they were explained in a way that made sense. So yeah, let me actually here. I've got the algorithms. Let me just kind of draw really quickly.
While you're drawing that,
Yeah.
Just to clarify, so somebody mentioned in the chat, Brad here, or excuse me, Brett. So is this, in this scenario, is it just B feeding back into itself?
Yeah, in what you were just hearing, it was just B. And then I was turning up the feedback, and as I was turning up the feedback, you were just hearing B feeding back into itself.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, all of the first part, I was only using basically, if you were going to draw it as an algorithm, 2 operator. So this one is modulating this one, and you're hearing this one. And then this, when you see this little box here, that's what's marking the feedback. So in the very last part where I was showing the feedback, this was all that was going on. Cool. And here I've got algorithms. These are the algorithms from a TX81Z, which is another 4-operator synthesizer. The reason I've got it on here and not on the screen is so I can draw some notes on it. So there's basically only a few different types of algorithms. And when you start to see patterns in the algorithms, it makes it a lot more simple than looking at the whole algorithm. Especially when you look at like the DX7 algorithms, and there's 30 of them, 32, and a lot of them look really similar, and they have, excuse me, they've got, you know, all of these different stacks of operators. If you look at it like that, you're going to get really confused and be like, what is going on?
Right.
But if you kind of just look at it as like this is one pattern, and then this is another pattern, and they're just like combined, it gets a little simpler. So I'm just going to talk about like the basic patterns that FM algorithms can have. And then once you know those like 4 or 5 patterns, all of the other algorithms are just combinations of those simple patterns.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Cool. So the first one is this one in the bottom right-hand corner, which is just, it's not even FM. It's just the 4 operators going straight to the audio output. So they're just being added together. And that is useful for like organ sounds. I'm sure you could come up with other cool things to do with it. So that one, yeah, there's not that much to talk about because really there's no FM going on. So then the second kind is like this one, which is two operator stacks, which is basically like the one that I've been showing so far. So this one, like that 2 operator FM, is pretty simple. It's just this one modulating the other one. And then all you're doing is you've got 2 sounds like that, and you can combine them together. So you can either have like, you know, like the DX7 electric piano sound that's really famous. I think it's 3 of these. I'm not sure. There's probably different ones. So all they're doing is like that sound has like different parts. Like there's an attack at the beginning, and then there's a sustained part, and then there's like another attack that fades out more slowly than that first attack. And they're just making each of those 3 sounds with 3 different stacks of 2 operators. But if you just look at one stack at a time and make a cool noise with that, and then make one with the other, and then kind of crossfade between the 2, it feels a lot more simple and easy to figure it out. Okay, cool.
So that's where the XY on, I think it's the second parameter screen. That's where you're talking about where you can use the XY to kind of cross in between those 2. that
Oh
screen.
yeah, this crossfader here.
Got it.
That's the way it works on the Digitone, which is different than most of the other FM synths, but it makes it really fast to change up your algorithm and hear different sounds. Yeah, the Digitone, like a lot of things, it makes just faster than other FM synths. And you do lose a few options there, but you still have so many options that you can make a ton of different sounds with it. Cool. Then the third sound or third pattern is two modulators modulating one carrier. So it's two operators modulating one third operator. So it's basically like this. So this one and this one are modulating this one, and this is the one that you actually hear. This, you can do a lot of things like with a analog synth when you have two oscillators and you kind of detune them so you get like chorusing sounds. It's really easy to do that with this algorithm inside of an FM synth. And actually, you would think that since there's like all of this modulation going on, that these two would interact with each other, but they really don't very much. Basically, it just sounds like adding the harmonics that this would generate, modulating this, and the harmonics that this would generate. So, yeah, it's just as simple as doing two operator FM. You're just doing it with twice, basically, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Cool. And then the next one is one carrier modulating one modulator modulating multiple carriers. So that's like this. So it's this one is modulating these three, and those are the three that you're hearing. This is really good for like stacking octaves and stuff like that. Like if this one is down an octave, this one is in the middle, and this is up an octave, or up a fifth or something like that if you want to make a chord. But then they'll all be modulated the same amount by this modulator, which you can use to control the brightness of these three. But then you get a really wide frequency range by tuning these differently. And I'm going to go over a bunch of audio examples too.
Nice. I do have a question.
Yeah.
It depends. You may need to revisit it, but I just want to put it out there. Someone asked, how does algorithm 6 work on the Digitone though?
Okay. Yeah. That is let me double check, but that's that's the weird one that is kind of unique to the Digitone, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But there's one more algorithm that's like a standard FM algorithm that I want to talk about first. Which actually the TX81Z doesn't really have, well, kind of, maybe, I don't know. But it's this one, which is like a 4 operator stack. So it's this one is modulating this one, which is modulating this one, which is modulating this one. And that seems really complicated, but basically all that you need to think about is that the modulation is going to add harmonics to each of these. And so it's basically just like modulating this one with one really harmonically rich waveform coming out of this one. So in a way, it's similar to the 2 operator. I mean, you can do more than that because you can have like different envelopes on each of these or something like that, or you could detune them. But to simplify it, just so that you can think about it more easily, that's basically all that's going on, is like each of these is progressively adding harmonics, which is then modulating the one that you're going to hear.
Okay.
Yes, and then algorithm 6 in the Digitone is, well, here, let me bring this back up, because it's basically So this is algorithm 6. And so it's that 1 modulating 2, but then it's also the 2 modulating 1, because let me kind of redraw it. So, so it's that 1 to 2, because each of these is modulating the other 2, but then you've also got the 2 to 1 on each. Sorry, I'm trying to draw fast and it's looking messy. So yeah, and then since the Digitone kind of has like macro controls, you don't have necessarily like control over each type of modulation individually. You just have like 2 macros that control the modulation over all of those. And so this is the algorithm that you want to use if you want like crazy metallic sounds that, like, let me pull up the preset that I was playing with earlier that uses that. Or actually, let me see. Oh, actually, this bass sound, I think. What did I? So yeah, that bass sound. That I was playing earlier uses algorithm 6. And what I was doing was using the crossfader to go in between the output of C and B. Wait, sorry, hold on 1 second. Let me make sure. Okay, yeah, something got messed up with the sound on. Okay, yeah. So that bass sound does use that algorithm 6.
Trevor, the camera just did the.
Oh, did the camera turn off? Sorry.
Yeah. But while you're
Yeah.
just kind of resetting that, I just want to ask everyone if they have any other additional questions. I think I'm grabbing all of them as they pop up here.
Cool. And we're going to go over some actual sound examples in a second of all the algorithms so that they make a little more sense than just looking at them as diagrams too. Cool. But yeah, that bass sound in the patch that I was playing earlier is made with algorithm 6.
Nice.
And it does really weird stuff like, okay, C, so this is B, which I haven't really explained the Digitone yet because we were just talking about FM in general. But basically B is the depth and envelope generator control of B modulating whatever it's modulating. So in this case, this B is modulating C and the B below it. And if you listen as I turn this knob, because it gets like non-linear, where there's parts in the movement of the modulation where it sounds less modulated and parts where it sounds more modulated. Let's see if... So yeah, algorithm 6 is really weird. It's hard to kind of figure out exactly what's going on because there's like so many modulation things going at once.
Right.
Yeah, but that one is fun if you want to make crazy metallic-y FM patches. Start playing around with operator 6. Another really cool thing while we're talking about algorithms with the Digitone is that you can start changing algorithms with like this one knob.
That's something I love about that.
Yeah, and like this patch was designed for that one algorithm, but
Sounds
that
great.
patch that patch was designed for algorithm 6, but you can just start turning that algorithm knob and like you get a lot of interesting and good sounds from a lot of the other algorithms as well, not just from algorithm 6. Which
totally.
isn't yeah, it's an interesting thing that you wouldn't ever try with most FM synths because it would take you 12 button pushes to change all of those settings. So cool. Yeah. What do you think? Should we answer some questions now, or should we go into like some sound examples of the different algorithms?
I think let's do that. Let's go into that. I think you got all the questions. One, Nick actually mentioned earlier, but you might have just kind of touched on it, and it was just, I think, more of an observation where he was like, I would expect if the increase of the level of operator A or B, I would increase harshness of the sound. But on the Digitone, I found that there are some spots on the amount that are softer like others. And he's like, why is it that phasing? So when you were actually turning the knob, when you're changing the parameters on algorithm 6, and when you were using the knob X, Y, and crossfading in, I did notice what he may have been referring to. I believe that's what he might have been talking about, where it did kind of do like a phasing, or like it would kind of soften and then go back to being harsh. But it must have to do with the modulation of various parameters within that particular algorithm.
Yeah, I think what's going on, and so if you're using a more simple algorithm where there's less like multiple things modulating multiple things, you're right, where as you turn up the modulation level, it's going to modulate, it's going to get more harsh, and when you turn it down, it's going to get less harsh. I think the reason that there's weird things with algorithm 6 where you've hit like weird spots, just because there's so much modulation going on that you're getting like weird cancellations, and I'm sure in order to figure out exactly what's going on, you'd have some weird trigonometry equations with like sines and phases and stuff. So
well, yeah, he did actually mention back in the chat. He was like, yeah, that's what he was talking about. So cool. And there was another mention here. Would be cool for Trevor to explain page 2 for the ones wanting to learn a little bit more about the FM and the Digitone.
Yeah, the page 2, I think they're referring to synth page 2 of
yes.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, let's get a little bit more into the actual Digitone and less about FM in general. Let me go back to that other pattern and then load. I had some like presets.
Cool.
Okay, yeah, let's load this bell preset. So this is that simple 2-operator stack algorithm. It's algorithm 2 on the Digitone. I'm actually going to crossfade to X. So if you look at the bottom here, it says X and Y. and then this crossfader goes in between a mix of X and Y. So we're only hearing 2-operator FM right now. It's just a really simple bell sound. So the controls on the first page here are mostly the ratios of all the oscillators. So there's A and C, which you have individual control over. You have individual control over B too. It's just the way you change them is a little different. It's like the bottom one goes up to 16 and then the top one resets. So you just have to pay attention while you're dialing it in. But you can definitely dial in any ratio you want. And then this is the feedback, whichever one has that little square feedback loop designation around it, you're going to add feedback to it with this knob. The detuning is it's just detuning the oscillators so that you get more phasing and like inharmonic interactions instead of everything. So that's kind of like the thing with digital FM synths, where if you don't detune them, everything will be perfectly in phase and everything will sound like very, I don't want to say clean because you can get very like metallic noises with them, but everything will be perfectly, it will sound like exactly the same all the time and nothing will kind of chorus or phase. So this detune just kind of gives you the option of adding some of that like phasing and floating that like analog synths have by just like turning one knob. And if you don't want to just like have this one knob and turn it like that, but you want more like actual control, like you're like, oh, I want, like in this patch actually I did that. So A and C I left tuned to 1 to 3.5, which is kind of like a metallic-y overtone sound. I think that's just from like the DX7 Bell patch that I just copied. And then B, since you can't turn it to half algorithms, I tuned that one up half a step, and then this one up 0.12, which is really just some random number that I came up with, so that it's detuned from so that the right pair of 2-operator FM is detuned from the left pair.
Got it.
Yeah.
And now just to kind of give everybody just to where you're getting that, it's on the synth 1. If you double tap on that, it takes you into that screen. So if you double tap on that synth 1, and they can see, just because I think a couple of people wanted to see what was going on in that screen.
Yeah.
Okay. And then with the synth 2, the additional menu, if you double tap on it, it takes you right. Okay. I know people are mentioning it, so I just want to make sure everybody out there that's following along and with you we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Great.
It's definitely, you can use Elektron stuff and not realize that there's that second page there, but there's a bunch of cool extra little settings that like you don't need all the time, but they can do some cool things. Okay, yeah, so that's basically this first page, the synth 1. So right now I've got it, I'll crossfade it back to the left pair, so it's A and C. And then we can talk about that synth 2 page that someone was asking about. So this one is 2 envelope generators. And then there's also an end level, which is most envelope generators will go from 0 up to whatever they're supposed to go to, and then go back down to 0. But this will just go to a different level instead of that 0. And then this is the overall level. So it basically sets whatever the maximum is. So say like I set this so it has an attack and it goes up to 127. If I set this to like 50, 127 won't actually be 127, it'll be 50. So it's like if you think of this envelope as generating a control signal, then this is attenuating that control signal.
Got it.
And then the second page of this has so you can delay how long until the attack starts, which is cool because you can get you have two envelopes and two modulation things, so you can get things where I've got a patch that I'll show in a minute where in the beginning there's one modulation sound and then it ends with a different modulation sound. So these are just like more envelope settings. It's just whether or not that envelope is going to reset. And then the last thing here is this phase reset of the oscillators. So if you want it to kind of be like a DX7 and other Yamaha FMs where every time you trigger, you get everything starting at the same time, you would just leave this on all. And if you want things to kind of be a little bit more chaotic, let's see if we can pull up like all of the oscillators. I'm not sure how much. In certain patches that can be really subtle, but yeah, we're not really hearing much of that right now. But it's just whether or not it's going to act everything will be reset and starting at exactly the same, and every time you push that button it'll sound the same, or if it kind of sounds different and drifts every time you push a trigger the way an analog synth kind of will. And then basically there's just two of these envelopes. So you have two of those attenuators, and then on the second page those same settings for both of those things. And the one that says A, so if you look, there's one that says A and there's one that says B. The one that says B is going to control how much B is modulating whatever it's modulating. And the one that says A is going to control how much A is modulating whatever it's modulating. So yeah. And on some of the other FM synths, each operator has its own envelope like this. This one, you only get those, but you can still, it simplifies the controls and you can still do a lot of different things. Cool.
Cool.
So yeah, back to this kind of simple bell sound. Actually, let me reset it because I think I changed a bunch of settings. Okay, cool. So yeah, this demonstrates that simple is that too loud now? Sorry. That simple two operator FM. And we already kind of talked about this earlier, but how it sounds less metallic if this is an even number. Like right now I set it to 3-1. And if I set it to 3.5 to 1, it'll sound more metallic. And then, yeah, using that detune can just make it sound wider. And I know this doesn't sound at all like a bass, but a lot of the FM bass sounds are basically similar to this, probably with just like a shorter decay and lower octave. And then lower ratios, basically. So that was like a higher ratio, like 3.5 of the modulator was at 3.5 and the carrier was at 1. So you get more of those harsher, brighter, metallic-y overtones. A lot of bass sounds have lower ratios. Actually, I'm going to go. So now I've panned over to the one on the right where we have the feedback loop.
Okay.
Because I want to talk about like a way to use the feedback loop without just getting like noise sounds. So sorry, I have to reset one thing. So I've got that really short attack or decay envelope. And, you know, you can get more subtle, or you can get that really, that, you know, that FM bass sound. And bringing up just a little bit of feedback here, you get a more aggressive modulation. Basically what you're doing is you're changing the shape of the modulator, and the more harmonics that that modulator has, the more harmonics the output from your carrier is going to have, which is actually something I wanted to talk about, the difference between 6 and 4 operator FM synths. So
okay,
if you look at, if it sounds like you're really missing something by not having 6 operators on a 4 operator synth, because if you look at the 6 operator synth, you see that it's got like a ton of different algorithms. But if you notice that a lot of these algorithms are just taller stacks, and that's because like DX7s and a lot of the other 6 operator synths only have sine waves. So you need to use a taller stack to get more abrasive tones, and a lot of the 4 operator synths have more wave shapes than just sine waves, so you can still get a lot of those sounds by using more complicated wave shapes, which is another thing that the Digitone gives you. The harmonics here. Right now I'm changing the wave shape from sine waves of the waves that you're hearing. So adding that is the advantage that you get with 4 operator synths. It just makes it a little faster to get those more complicated harmonics than having to use a stack of 3 or 4 sine wave operators. And then the other cool thing, oh, it's still that same pattern that you get with the Digitone that you don't get with most FM synths, is that filter. Which the cool thing about that is that you can make a kind of crazy metallic sound and be a little bit sloppier with your like FM sound design, where if you were using an FM synth that didn't have a filter, you would just have like all of this obnoxious high frequency stuff going on.
And one person mentioned in the chat, so is it correct to assume that they don't bother making 6 complex oscillator stacks because they dissolve into noise too quickly?
Well, Yeah, I mean, I think at some point you would just be modulating so much that it would just, you wouldn't be getting anything else, and yeah, you would just start getting noise basically. And like, yeah, the tallest stacks on the DX7 are 4 operators. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of those, like I was saying, those stacks, even like the 4 operator ones, it's a lot more, it makes it a lot more versatile synth when you have a stack of 2 and a stack of 4, because you can make one sound. Here, let me kind of show that. So you can, so let's crossfade over to the left side. So we'll just make it like a, with the left 2, okay. So with the left 2, we'll make like a sustained sound. That's not like super crazy or modulated or anything. So that's like the sustain of our sound. We can even add like a little bit of attack on there. And then with the right side, we'll make like a more abrasive, like bitey attack sound. And then this will kind of demonstrate the way that you can add 2 sounds together.
Okay.
So yeah, like that sound by itself is kind of, I mean, you could probably use it as like some type of percussion thing, but it's kind of obnoxious by itself, right? And then this sound by itself is kind of boring, but maybe if we, you know, obviously spend a little more time working on it if we were doing the sound design. But so we've got this kind of sustained sound and this attack sound. Maybe it doesn't need to be quite so. Maybe this is more usable of a sound. And of course you can, you know, make one louder, the other one louder. And spend more time tweaking it, but that's kind of like the basis of, like, even though you have those 6 operators on like a DX7, you're not going to use all 6 for one sound. You would use 2 or 3 or 4 for one, and then 2 or 3 or 4 for another, and then kind of combine them. It's like almost thinking of it as like an analog synth that's like multi-timbral.
Gotcha.
And then you can like split those sounds into individual sounds, and just worry about programming one at a time and then combining them, and not looking at that big algorithm that's kind of overwhelming by itself.
Right. That makes sense.
Cool. This is a demonstration of that organ sound, which FM synths, even though this isn't even FM, are pretty good at making organ patches. This is just a stock Digitone patch. It's called That Organ SM. I think it's like preset 9 or something on the Digitone. It looks a little weird here, the way it's laid out, but basically this is just that. Let me pull up the algorithm again.
Okay.
It's basically just this algorithm here where it's like 4 operators just going straight out with no modulation. This is another bass sound. I think I kind of already went over that.
We have a question too.
Yeah. Was there another question?
Will each successive modulator subtract from the output level of a carrier, or is it better to have a full force carrier then modulate?
Will it subtract from the volume? Well, so it might. I don't think it's actually going to lower the amplitude, but the bass frequencies will kind of start to sound less loud. I'm not sure if they actually are, or if it's just like a psychoacoustic thing. So let me see. So here, is that what you're talking about, where the bass frequencies start to sound less like they're kind of going away when you crank up the modulation because the higher frequencies kind of take over?
That's what he is talking about, but I'm not 100%.
Cool. I think so. So yeah, I don't think it's actually getting quieter, but yeah, perception wise. So I think if you want that kind of like really metallic FM sound, and then you also want like a deep bass sound, let me go.
Yeah, that's what you are referring to. That's what he was asking about.
Okay, cool. So yeah, basically that's one of the other cool things about the Digitone is that you can do that because you can use the filter. So this has got all of that like rich FM-y kind of stuff going on. But if it sounds a little bit too bright, but you don't want to, on a regular FM synth with no filter, you would have to take a bunch of time and very carefully adjust a lot of different things to get the level of that brightness down. But with the Digitone, you can kind of cheat and just use a low pass filter. Oh no.
Oh, the camera.
Yeah. I think, oh, sorry, hold on. I have to switch the battery in the camera.
All right. While you're doing that, I'll just kind of check in on everybody out there. Thanks for tuning in and listening in here. And if you have any other questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat so I can read them out for Trevor. Are you all set, Trevor? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is the camera back on? Yeah, there we go. Cool. Yeah, so that's the other. If you do generate a sound with a ton of rich metallic-y sounds, the filter does a good job of kind of like catching on to those, and if you kind of dial it in, you can get some interesting like acidy bassline stuff by letting the resonance on the filter kind of catch those metallic-y FM textures that are in there. I mostly loaded bass sounds because I only like bass sounds, but I'll try to play some other sounds too. Cool. So this is a patch I made. I think I tweaked one of the presets, but Um, um, so yeah, someone was asking earlier about a 6 operator stack. I mean, if a 4 operator stack sounds like that, I don't think I've really played. If you wanted to try it, you could use like a soft synth where you have a matrix instead of algorithm, like FM8, and like do an 8 operator stack and see what happens. I haven't tried that, but that would be maybe a fun thing to do and see how crazy it gets. But yeah, I mean, this gets there's quite a bit going on here. So I've got LFOs modulating the feedback and the harmonics, which is the wave shaping basically here.
Speaking of modulation, can someone is asking if we can see some LFO modulation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's actually. So I've got 2 different. The modulator on one is going later than the other one, so you've got a slower attack on one and a longer attack on the other. Of course, this is just a noise patch, but the LFOs there are modulating the. Here, I'll turn them off and show what they're modulating. The feedback and the harmonics. So yeah, the LFOs are really powerful on the Digitone. Another cool thing, let me pull up this other patch. Another really cool thing about the LFOs on the Digitone, since you only have, you still have quite a few envelopes, but you don't have one envelope for each operator like you would on some FM synths. But these LFOs you can use as envelopes. So here I'm using one to, let me double check what I'm doing here. So yeah, I'm changing the wave shape of A with this LFO modulation. And I'm using it as an envelope. And the way you kind of do that are these different retrigger modes. So it's mostly these last 2 modes where that little arrow means that it's going to retrigger it when you hit a note. And it'll only play 1 cycle of the wave, or half of the cycle, the part of it that's above the 0, which just makes it more like an envelope. And then the ones that work best that way are saw, exponential, and ramp. Just because, you could definitely use some of the other ones. Just those are the 3 that are shaped like envelopes. And well, the other cool thing is that you've got basically envelope control of LFO amount. Let me pull up one of these other patches that has something that we can kind of modulate a little more with an LFO, like a sustained sound. So yeah, there we're just kind of modulating the mix. So this is that organ patch, and we're kind of modulating which overtones we're hearing with the LFOs. Another interesting thing to mention about the LFOs on this is that they go up into audio rate. So in one way, this is a 6-operator FM synth if you use the 2 LFOs also as modulators. Let's actually do that right now for a second and see what it sounds like. Okay, yeah, let's hear modulate C. The ratio it might be, yeah, it's probably going to be jumpy. Sorry, I'm doing a horrible job of. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's the LFO. Nice. I mean, you could do interesting stuff that you wouldn't normally do with a regular FM synth. Let me really quick just so we can modulate like how much A is modulating C. Let me turn that off for a second. Okay, so that's with the modulation all the way up.
Trevor, while you're dialing that in, I do have a question that's out there in the chat, and someone, especially others that are maybe new to FM synthesis and exploring algorithms, there is a question of somebody wanted to mainly know what algorithms are best for creating what kinds of sounds. Maybe there's a like a chart or some place where we can kind of point somebody in the direction so they can kind of,
okay, yeah,
I don't know if I'm phrasing this right, but maybe just not only have like the source of the algorithm, but maybe somebody that's new can kind of have that chart to kind of correlate what what algorithm would get them in the direction of making specific sounds so they can start to explore that.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm not sure myself. Maybe if you do, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I can't think of any like specific like one web page that like lists a bunch of different ones. If you go on YouTube and just start searching for like FM tutorial or FM patch explanation, there's a lot of videos where people will explain how like one patch is set up. Sometimes they don't explain how it works. They just like tell you like set this to 52, and so like you kind of have to know what they're talking about.
Right.
But I don't know of like one website that has a bunch of different ones. That would be a cool thing to have. If we find one, we'll add it to the video comments on here later. But yeah, but I can just kind of talk about a few different algorithm types and what kind of algorithms you would probably want to start with in order to get what kind of sounds.
Okay, cool.
Cool. So yeah, so these like additive ones are good if you want to make like these where it's just all of the oscillators going straight out. If you want to start making organ sounds, or if you just want to make like drones with like multiple oscillators kind of stacked on top of each other. The like 2-operator ones like this, these are really good for basses and like metallic hits and stuff like that. You can just like, I mean, you can make a whole like bass or like bell or like metallic percussion hit sound with just one of these. And then you've got the other one to just either, you can just copy what you did on the left one and then add it to the right one, and then just like either just make it louder or just slightly change the settings and have them be like a little bit different so they kind of add together and make a more complex sound. Or with these, you can do those sounds like something like the electric piano sounds where it's got like a harsh attack or some type of attack that's different from the sustain. And you use one of these stacks with probably like something with like a higher ratio on the modulator and a really short decay, so that has that bright, harsh, fast attack or sound. And then the other one is a little more mellow sound and does the body and sustain of your sound.
Okay.
Yeah. This one here this is really good for like wider sounds. Actually, I've got a good example of that I had pulled up a second ago.
Cool. And just to let everyone in the chat know, especially those that are new to the Digitone, the algorithm chart that he was looking at is the Digitone algorithms, and I did drop that link in the chat. I can drop it again as well.
Sorry, that same sequence over and over again. I'm sure everyone's tired of it by now. These like one modulator going to multiple carriers are really good for like a wider sound as well, but where you do want modulation, as opposed to the one where it's just four operators going straight out. Are there other like types of sounds that you want to know what type of operator or algorithm to pick for that type of sound? The other thing that the Digitone is really good at is drum synthesis, which I didn't really talk about just because I wasn't sure how much people were into like making drum sounds and how much people were into making melodic synth sounds.
Right. And no, and there wasn't any specification as to what type of sound. It was more just how to correlate which algorithms to. You answered that. So
okay.
What I can do is, probably after the chat, or excuse me, after the live stream, we can maybe find something, and then if we do, we can just drop it in the description. But yeah, definitely, we have some people. Hey, Josh, thanks for hanging in there. He's like, yeah, drums. So
okay.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cool. So there's obviously a bunch of different types of drum sounds, and here, let me reload this pattern. Okay, cool. So as far as drums go, here's like a simple kick and snare. It's actually like the same. What did I do? Oh, I'm on the wrong. Okay, yeah. So all I did was, let me stop the sequencer. So yeah, on the left side, I used. Okay, so yeah, this algorithm. Let me show it on the iPad so it's easier to see. It's algorithm 8 on the Digitone, and I think I just took a preset kick drum pattern or patch that sounded really good and tweaked it so that I could make a snare. So yeah, this is the main one making the kick drum sound, and then this is a feedback one, so I can make a noise sound with that. The cool thing about the noise on FM is that it's pitched. So like that's the kick. And then if you crossfade over to Y, this is like your snare sound. But if you, it's not just like white noise, it has pitch too. So that's really fun to like kind of experiment with different frequencies with that feedback, which sounds at first like white noise, but isn't just white noise. Mm-hmm. As far as with the Digitone, this wave shape, the like exponential one, is really good for percussive pitch drops. So basically, all you do is set that LFO to control the pitch of your entire synth voice. You set it to this exponential waveform. I think for speed, it's set to 128 here. Okay, yeah, and you want it so that it's going to reset every time you hit the trigger. And then, just, oh, we're not hearing that part of it right now. Cool. Yeah, and then as far as like metallic hi-hats and metallic snares and cymbals and all of that kind of stuff, the FM is really good for that as well. So yeah, this is the other sound that, here, let me play that pattern again. So it's this sound.
Okay.
So yeah, I basically just took like the bell preset kind of sound and tweaked it a little. I used like, instead of using any full number ratios, I used odd or half. So like 1 to 2.5 and 0.5 to 0.75 as the ratios, so that it was more metallic-y sounding and less melodic and harmonic sounding. Or melodic's the wrong word, but and I've got 2 of them at different pitches, and I just went crossfaded in between them. I think if we, so this is one of them. And this is that crazy, also if you want to play with drum synthesis on the Digitone, that algorithm 6, which has like all of the intermodulation and like everything is modulating everything, definitely play with that. Or like if you're trying to make any type of drony, harsh, noisy type stuff with the Digitone, play with algorithm 6 and algorithm 4. Those are going to get you those crazy metallic FM drum sounds.
Okay. Do we have time for another question? Someone
Sure.
asked, could you guys also explain multi-map mode?
Multi-map mode. That I'm not really sure about.
I'm not sure either. I apologize for
Sorry.
out there. But I thought I'd just throw it out there just in case. Cool. Do we have any other questions out there in the chat? Just want to kind of touch base with everyone. Oh, I do actually have one.
Okay.
Someone asked, let's see here. They asked if you could do a piano. Let me make sure I get the question right here. What's the secret to non-cheesy electric piano FM sounds? And he's like, no Whitney Houston, please.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of like cheesy electric piano presets. I'm probably not like the best person to answer this question because I never make like electric piano sounds. I guess what I would try is like, I think part of it is going to be like adding some
chorus.
Yeah, like the chorus and like, let me see. I've got like this short delay on here that's kind of.
Someone threw out there, the secret is in the Digitone's filter.
Oh yeah, that would be cool too, actually. And this has got the filter on.
Thanks, that Jersey bloke.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like kind of start with the standard like cheesy electric piano preset because it's gonna get you the piano sound, and then just like obviously don't do that to it if you still want it to sound like a piano. And then just start like tweaking it. Maybe add like a little bit more feedback to give it just like a little more edge. Let's see sorry, let me figure out what. Okay, so that's our sustain. But yeah, electric pianos are going to be mostly two parts. This part, which is like the sound of the tine being hit, and then the kind of like sustain sound.
Okay.
So on this one, the two B operators are the tine, and the A and C are the sustain. So maybe let's like make our tine sound like, oh, that's not on our tine. Maybe like detune our tine a little bit so it doesn't sound so like perfect like a digital FM synth. And then, or maybe even like lower its ratio a little so it's a little darker and not so like bright. And then maybe let's like modulate the filter a little. Probably don't want that much resonance on the filter if we're going to modulate it like that. I don't know, is this a better electric piano, or is this still a cheesy 80s electric piano preset?
I think it's. I don't make many electric piano sounds myself, but Jasser, what do you think? I know you're out there. You asked about this.
I only spent a few minutes on it. Of course, I would spend longer if I wasn't on a live stream, but
right.
I guess if you go too crazy, it doesn't sound like an electric piano. But so somewhere in that world between the cheesy electric piano and the like more modern synth sound. And then you're actually,
I think the LFO definitely helps.
Cool. Yeah. And then the Digitone has a lot of really good effects. So the chorus is probably going to help out your electric piano a lot. Yeah. I mean, we could keep talking about FM forever, but hopefully I went over some of the basics so that when you look at an FM synth, it's not, you're not just like, what do all of these things mean?
Right. No, I think you did cover, definitely went over the basics in the beginning and really touched on some of the specific points with the Digitone, which is great. Before we wrap it up, I'll just shout out and just tell everyone thank you for tuning in. And we will, if we do find that link referring to the algorithms and maybe pointing you in a direction of algorithm to making a specific sound, a chart for those out there that are new to FM synthesis and exploring that, we'll post it in the description for sure. But anything else you want to add, Trevor, before we kind of end out here?
Sure. Yeah. I guess one other thing I thought of, as far as the algorithm thing goes, part of what I was trying to explain is that like the algorithms, don't look at them as like a whole algorithm. Just look at the individual parts of the algorithm. And then once you know what types of sounds you want to make and what piece building blocks you need, then you can just look at the list of all of the algorithms and be like, okay, this one has a feedback oscillator or operator that's going straight to the output and a 2 operator stack. And that's what I need to make this sound. I mean, not the one that I'm on right now. I shouldn't. Or like, you know, this one has a 4 operator stack. That's what I need for what I want to do. Or this one has 2 operator stacks. So yeah, maybe think about it that way, where it's look at the pieces and not the overall algorithm.
Got it. Okay. And just to touch back on the ratios, just one last question here. Are there ratios that give you certain melodic intervals like seconds, third, fourths, and fifths?
Yeah. Okay. So 2 and oh no, let me turn the camera back on. So 2, 4, 8, and 16 are going to be octaves from 1. Let's go to the one where, sorry, give me a second. Okay, here we go. Actually, sorry, let me just load that organ preset. So let me set all of these to 1.
Cool. While you're dialing that in, I just want to let everyone know in the chat. So next Tuesday, we'll have the Max for Live discussion. And then Trevor and I will be back the week after that, going over some iPad apps and using them with Modular.
Yeah.
Got that right, Trevor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Cool. So these are the same note. And then 2 is an octave. 3, I think that's a fifth, right? Or an octave and a fifth. 4 is 2 octaves. 5 I would have to calculate the other ones. I know that 3, I'm pretty sure that's the 5th octave and a 5th. So yeah, any like 2, 4, 8, 16 are going to be octaves. The ones in between will be in the harmonic series. And so you can just calculate the frequencies. But sorry, off the top of my head, I'm not sure exactly what the which notes those are.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Okay, I think you covered a lot of stuff tonight. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thanks. It was fun playing around with the Digitone. Hopefully there was some good information. So
Definitely. Yeah, I love the Digitone. I use it pretty much in all my live sets. So I understand that's the strength of it that it has. So yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in and all your questions and participating. We really do appreciate it, and your comments. And again, yes, so next week is the Max for Live discussion. And then the week after that, Trevor and I will be back talking about the use of iPad apps with Modular. And good night, everyone, and have a good week.
all right, thanks for watching.
Thank you.